Good afternoon, everyone. We are here this afternoon to brief you on the findings of U.S. Africa Command's investigation into the ambush of U.S. and Nigerian soldiers near Tango, Niger, in early October 2017.
The Pentagon on May 10th released a long-awaited report on the Niger incident, and what the Pentagon found was that there was no single factor that was responsible for the 4 deaths that occurred in Niger on October 4th. What the Pentagon did find was that there were multiple factors, institutional, organizational, and individual, that contributed to the disaster that day. What happened in the October 4th attack in Niger was that a team of U.S. special operators was out on a mission with local forces who they were partnered with, and they had gone on an overnight mission in search of a suspected militant. They were unsuccessful, and they were returning to base, at which time they stopped in a village and were ambushed quickly after they were leaving a village. And they were overwhelmed by a huge militant force. The Pentagon believes that there were about 100 militants affiliated with the Islamic State, the local branch of the Islamic State. And these soldiers really weren't prepared for a combat mission. They were not wearing their protective gear at the time. They weren't coming under any sort of fire. And so it took them a while to regroup, and ultimately they weren't able to fight their way out, considering that there were about a force of about 30 between Americans and troops from Niger facing this larger force of about 100 people. The report also attempts to put to rest months of speculation and conflicting accounts about how one of the soldiers, David Johnson, died. He was the soldier who had been missing for 48 hours after the initial incident, and there had been a lot of speculation that he was abducted, potentially. And it turns out, according to this Pentagon report, that he was killed not long after, about half an hour after the other soldiers, and not so far from the same incident site. And what the investigators found was that in this very chaotic battle that was unfolding, he and other troops, they decided to withdraw, and David Johnson and several local force troops tried to get into a car and get away. They weren't able to do that because of the intensity of the fire, so they all fled on foot, and all 3 of them were killed. According to the report, David Johnson ran in a certain direction. He tried to seek refuge by a tree. He was firing on these approaching forces, but he was ultimately killed.
I take ownership for all the events connected to the ambush of 4 October. Again, the responsibility is mine.
The report doesn't add a lot to our knowledge of what happened. It leaves open some questions about, well, first of all, who the Pentagon, if anyone, will hold responsible in a sort of disciplinary way for this incident. And then another question it doesn't answer is, how will this affect the American military mission in Africa going forward? We know that the U.S. Africa Command is taking some steps to adjust the way they authorize and conduct operations, especially partnered operations across Africa. But what we haven't seen yet is the extent to which they're really going to clamp back after an incident that just really went awry.
I'm committed. We'll come back to you.
Thank you all very much.